gentlemen, it's time! Brought to you by Ringside, the best in boxing. It's the Zapata Brand Boxing Podcast. Introducing first, fighting out of the Zapata Brand Studio in Berwick, Pennsylvania. He is an expert in boxing and bagels, George Zapata!
Well, welcome again, guys. It is Fight Week, and welcome to the Zapata Brand Podcast, Boxing Edition, brought to you by Ringside. Go to ringside.com/podcast, and you too can get upwards of 40% off selected brands. This weekend, the big fight is Tank Davis taking on Frank Martin. Also, David Benavidez stepping up to 175 pounds, challenging Alexander Gvozdyk. My guest, as always, when big fights come up, is Big P, Percy Crawford. Percy, how are you?
I'm good, big man. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, real good. Now, before we get into the main event of this week, how's everything going?
Everything's going great, man. Make sure you're recording.
Yeah, I am. I'm on.
Okay. Everything's going great, brother. It's heating up down here like it is across much of the world, but Louisiana's heat's a little different with the humidity, so it's starting to heat up down here. But we adjust and keep it moving, brother.
Well, I know it's there's a heat wave going on in Vegas. It's about 120 or something like that. My stepson's out there. It's about 120, but it's going to be hot this weekend as Tank Davis returns to the ring, and David Benavidez goes up to 175. So let's talk about quickly the co-feature. David Benavidez go against Alexander Gvozdyk. Initially, I thought this was a move where it would be an easy transition for David Benavidez. But as I'm watching some of Gvozdyk's fight footage, it's going to be a little tougher than I initially thought. Well, what do you think on that?
Man, it's so weird you start that, George, because I actually watched some footage of Gvozdyk last night myself, just to kind of refresh myself, because I remembered the Stevenson fight, but, it was so long ago, a little bit of the Arthur Beterbiev fight. So I focus on those two fights in particular. And, he's 37 years old now, so maybe that plays a part. But he did fight 3 times last year, which is very active in today's era. He's 6'2", long, lanky guy. He's not going to be an easy debut at light heavyweight for David Benavidez, in my opinion, unless he's lost a lot overnight. I think this is going to be a good bump, man.
I think it'll be a lot closer than I think. And one of the reasons why I switched that up is because I spoke to Ronald Ellis last night, and Ronald had fought David Benavidez. He also is the main sparring partner of Canelo Alvarez for a lot of his fights. One of the things he said was like, you know what? Benavidez is like an accumulation of punches, and he hits that way. He said Canelo Alvarez hits very hard, like even on 16 and 18 ounce gloves. I don't know if the volume of punches against a Gvozdyk will get him out of there, because Gvozdyk is pretty good at moving around. So my thing, why I switched back a little bit to say be closer, is because exactly what you said. Gvozdyk's been active. And active at 175, not active at 68. That's one of the main reasons I switched, for someone who's been in the ring with someone like Benavidez. Does this, if let's go on the premise that Benavidez wins, does he have to look good in order to stay at 75, or do you think if he doesn't look good, he'll go back to 68?
I think there has to be somewhat of a statement made. Given everything we're saying about Gvozdyk, I don't think he has to blow us away with his performance, but I do think some type of statement has to be made that he belongs there and the weight's not too much, because, Benavidez is used to being the bigger guy. He's used to being the guy looking down. Well, he's 6'2", Gvozdyk's 6'2", so that eliminates that. Obviously, Gvozdyk's been a career light heavyweight, so that eliminates his size advantage. Although he probably will be the bigger guy on fight night, he's not the natural light heavyweight. So I think there has to be a statement to be made for people to believe in him at 175. And quite honestly, if he wasn't chasing this Canelo thing, and I won't say chasing, if he wasn't anticipating fighting Canelo, being that he was his mandatory, I think we probably would have got him at light heavyweight a couple fights back. So this is not the craziest move, but I definitely think he has to make some sort of statement that he belongs there.
Now you saw, I'm assuming you saw Bivol last fight. Now take out the fact that his opponent wasn't the greatest. I mean, the announcers and the commentators made it seem like he was doing well. He was not. He wasn't. That was kind of a pumped up, oh, he's doing well, biased opinion there. Does Bivol has a better shot, or does Better Beef have a better shot against someone like Benavidez?
Well, that's a good question, man. I would probably lean Bivol only because he's able to stay away, move a little bit. I don't think the volume would overwhelm him because of his movement. To a Better Beef who's 40 or in his 40s now, not that he was ever a mover, but he's more there to be hit. So he would be there more for Benavidez to get his combinations off like he likes to do. And I think that's another thing fighting against the Nail Saturday night. Nail's not going to just be there. So Benavidez is going to have to do a little searching and finding and maybe even setting traps and picking his spots. Now, when I interviewed David Benavidez, he says prepare for him to look faster at 175. Now, if that's the case, Nail might have a little bit of trouble because if you watch the Stevenson fight, we know who Adonis Stevenson is, kind of a deliberate hard puncher. Better Be somewhat of the same, a deliberate hard puncher. So there's not a whole lot of punches coming in volume, just one or two very hard ones. With Benavidez, he likes to let off combinations. So if what he said holds true and he's fast at 175, it could be a long night for Voltage.
I find it a little hard to believe, only because as you move up in weight, you're going to lose something, unless he's got a good strength and conditioning coach that's putting an emphasis on the speed. And maybe he was lacking that at 168, but he was a good volume puncher and he had some speed at 168. I find it a little bit hard to believe just because as you get heavier, you're going to lose a little bit on that. I don't think it'll be faster. Maybe the same speed, but I don't think faster. I think he's I think that's a little bit of a hype job there because I don't see how someone goes 175 and gets faster from a 68. But
yeah. And I don't think he has to be blazing fast against Vossius. I do think if his hands are what they were at 68 or 75, just from the couple fights I watched last night. And one thing I will say, he takes a hell of a shot, man. So it's not like David Benavidez is this one-punch knockout artist anyway.
Yeah.
But Vossius takes a hell of a shot. He took some great left hands from Stevenson, some great left and right hands from Better Beef. I did see he didn't care for the body shots as much as the head shots. Not that Benavidez is a vaunted body puncher, but that's something to think about. And I think he fought Stevenson, who kind of gassed out. I thought there was times Stevenson was about to get him out of there, and he kind of gassed. We know David Benavidez's gas tank is unworldly, so that won't be an issue. So it's an interesting fight, man, and it's crazy because, George, I swear 2 weeks ago, I was like, I'm very invested in this fight now.
So let me get you out there. I know your picks haven't been the greatest, but I need a pick. I need to pick David Benavidez or Gvozdyk.
I've actually been making a little bit of a slight comeback because I kind of saw the Zane Wilder. I'm making a slight comeback. So I'm going to go David Benavidez. Vostic's age, I don't know. I think he's finally actually going to be looking at a guy that's eye to eye with him. Benavidez being 6'2" as well. I think size, age, volume, at the very least, David Benavidez outworks him and wins the decision.
And he has the deck stacked against him. Gvozdyk does. Benavidez he's on a momentum. He's on a big push here, and if he does something big here, I think that's going to vault him to that next superstar level where they're going to demand certain fights for him, whether it be the unification bout, whether it be Canelo, whatever. Well, they've already been calling for Canelo. He's going to be the go-to guy, and I wouldn't be surprised if Prime put him in the main events now more than they're doing now.
And one thing that maybe David doesn't get enough credit for, and I think Saturday night we'll see it again, is that he doesn't seem to be bothered by not getting the Canelo fight. It's not like you're going to catch him. It's not a trap fight, in my opinion, for him. He seems to get up for every fight. He seems to know kind of the deck is stacked against him in terms of opponents just jumping in the ring with him. So I don't think you'll catch him slipping. I think he'll be focused, prepared, and I think that's going to be a long night for boxers just off of volume, youth. I mean, you name it. I think he definitely has a deck stacked against him.
I think you're right there. You never catch him slipping. You never catch Benavidez slipping. I think he always likes the challenge, and going up to 75 is a challenge. I think if he can't get the Canelo fight, which I think he will get at some point, I think he'd go for that unification undisputed championship between the winner of Benavidez and Bivol, if that ever comes off. I don't know.
Absolutely. And Benavidez know he's in a position where if he slips up against a guy like Vulture, it's over with. Like Canelo could say, see, I told you he wasn't what y'all thought. I think he kind of actually hangs his hat on all those things. And I think that's why he never, you never kind of think like, man, he's kind of overlooking this guy. He always seems to be dialed in. And that's a great, great thing.
All right, well, we'll turn our attention now to the main event, which surprised me that Benavidez would take the co and Tank is the main event, only because I didn't think David Benavidez would take a co-feature, but he's the co-feature in this bout. Obviously, Tank Davis is the face of boxing, the draw in this against Frank Martin. Now, initially, this was a fight that I was just like, it's going to be a blowaway. I didn't have any. There wasn't a way that I think even me and you talk about it, that we thought there was a way that Frank could win. Now, as the fight's drawing closer, I think you've had a little bit of a change as far as maybe it's going to be a competitive fight, but I think when it initially was signed, you weren't as up for the fight. Now, a little bit different.
Yeah, if nothing else, George, my interest level is up. I don't know if it's great marketing on Frank and Tank's part. I don't know what it is, honestly, but my interest level's up. I've watched Frank in a few of his interviews. His confidence seems to be up. That always helps with me. I don't like, I told you when we initially talked about it, like, man, he looked a little shook when Tank went up on the stage at him. He seems to have grown his confidence. He seems to kind of know what to expect from Tank now, and he's countering it well with the verbal part of it. Now we got to see if the physical part matches up. But I did, man. I went from kind of being on the fence with this fight, so I'm invested in the Saturday night, and I actually love when fights do that for me. When it's kind of like you're not invested at first, and I'm full, and so I can't wait for this fight. I think Frank's done a great job at marketing and talking himself into, at least being believable that he can win this fight, and I think he believes in himself. Tank has kind of took more of a reserve approach, which is we kind of come to expect that from Javante. So I'm pumped for it, man. I'm ready for this fight.
And now he was a no-show at the Grand Arrivals, Tank. Have you heard what it was, or was he just being held up?
The footage I saw on X, I hate calling it X, on Twitter is someone put up footage. He was taking a run. He was running in Vegas during Grand Arrival. So I don't know if you're a Tank fan, if that's a scary notion that maybe Frank Martin's put some doubt in his mind, or he's super serious, or he got a few more pounds left to lose. I don't put a whole lot of stock into Grand Arrivals and things like that. Now, if you're late to the weigh-ins, I hold a little more something there. But I think guys like Tank, they're over the talking, they're over the, the scenery that comes with the event. He's just ready for the event. So the footage came out yesterday. He was on a jog. I'm not mad at it.
So let me ask you this. Is this fight going to tell us more about Frank Martin, or is it going to tell us more about Tank Davis?
I think this fight tells us more about Tank Davis, because the notion in boxing is that Tank Davis avoids what is perceived to be slick black fighters. I'll just put it out there. Mm-hmm. So now he's fighting a fellow southpaw, relatively slick. I wouldn't say Frank Martin's Pernell Whitaker, but he's got some movement and upper body movement that can, confuse some people. And I think, although he only has 18 fights, I think this is more of a barometer of, I think every fight from here on out is going to be what's next for Tank. So if he can dominate Frank Martin, I think it sets up something, at least we would perceive it would set up something big. You would think it would set up something big. But more than that, I think it tells us more about Tank, because I'm ready to see Tank let his hands go. And I think Frank Martin is the type of kid that if Tank's going to get off, he can get off on Frank Martin. Hell of a knockout shots. We know he has, one in the chamber at all times. But I don't like seeing Tank get away from his boxing and get away from throwing combinations. And we've seen that lately. And you've been around boxing a long time, George. Some guys start reading their own newspaper clippings and say that it only takes one. So that's what they kind of get in that mindset. I want to see Tank open up. So I think this tells me more about the veteran Tank than it will the kid with 18 fights and Frank Martin.
And I bring that up because of a few things. Number one, not that Tank hasn't fought anybody. I'm still waiting on Garcia's next fight to see where he's at. Was Devin Haney overrated, or was Ryan Garcia that good? I'm waiting on that on his next fight. So I'm going to put that to the side. But the Tank hasn't really had a fighter who is his size. I take Garcia out of there. His size or bigger that he fought that had. I think Frank Martin has some good skills. Great trainer. I think he has skills. So he's now put into a position where a guy who's not an A-level fighter yet. He's not at that elite level. He's not a T.O. He's not he fought Isaac Cruz, but now Isaac Cruz got that momentum. He's not a guy who's at that top there. He's not a Matias. So if Tank were to falter on us and not look good, that's bad on Tank. So Tank, the pressure's on Tank here to perform way better than what Frank Martin. If Frank Martin can get a couple rounds in the bank early, Tank might be in trouble if he could stay away.
Yes,
that goes to your point.
And I was going to say, I think it just goes back to Tank is starting to look like a guy that if you come prepared, you can win 7 rounds against him. Mm-hmm. And that's all you got to do in boxing is win 7 rounds. I agree 100% with what you're saying, because if Frank Martin win, lose, or draw, I think that changes things. If Frank Martin loses, I don't think anyone's going to be like, what's next for Frank Martin? I think Gervonta has to look a certain way for us to demand certain fights for him. And I think all the pressure is on Gervonta Davis. I truly look at this fight in a little bit, maybe a level above when he fought Rolly, who had 14 fights and most people didn't give him anything other than a puncher's chance. Well, Frank is kind of in the same boat, except he's given a boxer's chance. Can he stay away for 12 rounds and do enough to win 7 rounds? That's yet to be seen, but I'm with you. It's not as far going a conclusion as I initially thought.
Now, is this a sideways move or an up move for Tank? Because it seems to me like it's going sideways as opposed to fighting one of the upper echelon guys.
I definitely think it's a lateral move. And unfortunately for Tank, I think when you look at guys like, just 2 years ago, we had Devin Haney and we had, not Prom, but wanted to be seen. People wanted to see Lomo still. We had Ryan Garcia. All those guys have moved up. So the division's actually thinning out to where either he's going to have to move up or create some magic with a Shakur Stevenson or possibly even fight Lomo at some point. So it's a lateral move in that sense, because it's not like the division is lined up. It's like, oh, if Tank beats Frank Martin, he's going to fight this guy. It's going to be back to what you just asked me. Is his next fight going to be a lateral move or step up? It's a gift and a curse of being the face of boxing, because you literally can do what you want and most people don't question it. But in the internet world, in the internet era that we in, you will get called out.
Now him fighting on PBC and not going to Saudi where the money is, does that hurt him in the long run too?
I don't know if it hurts him in the long run, because one thing I will give Mayweather Promotions and PBC, they've actually moved Tank perfectly. I just think now it's time. Tank will be 30 this year, if he's not 30 already. Now it's time. I don't know how long-term the Saudi thing is. So I don't like seeing guys just run to the money, because I honestly believe Deontay Wilder left PBC a little too soon. He took some fights he probably shouldn't have taken, but when you go over there and you're chasing the money, they're going to fight you. And it might not always be favorable matchups. I just thought coming off the trilogy with Fury, I don't know if Joseph Parker or Zhang was the right fights for him. And, we see the outcome of that. Not saying Tank is nowhere near the stage Deontay Wilder is at, but I just think they've marketed him perfectly. They've matched him perfectly. Now it's getting to the point where it's time, because he's pushing 30.
Now, they've marketed him perfectly, but he does have to have someone to rub against. Would Shakur Stevenson, Lomachenko, or T.O. be that one? I'm leaning towards T.O. be the one that would be a massive, massive show. Shakur just is boring, and Loma's a little smaller. Do you see a fight with T.O. at some point here?
Oh, man, I actually think we would possibly see the other two over. Only because Tank doesn't seem very thrilled at going up to 140. Lomachenko's still a 35-pounder. Shakur is
Mhm.
only a couple fights into 135, and Shakur is about to be a free agent after July 6th, I believe. So I could see Shakur and Tank, and I actually think the fight will be big in the sense of they have history. They've talked crap to each other for so long. I think the buildup would be big. I don't know how exciting the fight would be, but if you're gonna have someone that can push Shakur to fight his ass off, I think it would be a Gervonta Davis. But I just Tank never seems to move when people talk about him going up to 40 and above 135, and he's starting to walk around a lot smaller. So I think he's kind of settled in.
And not only that, the inactivity I think it might creep up on him a little bit. So maybe he does have to move up, but inactivity for Tank, I think we're working on a year here, just about a year, if not over a year by the time he gets in the ring.
They fought in April, him and
Oh, they
Ryan.
fought in April. Oh,
Yeah.
wow, you're over a year. That's right. They did fight in April. Wow, time flies. Holy
I
cow.
mean, man, look, I saw Errol Spence say, I'm coming back in October, November. I'm like, geez, dude, the fight with Bud was in July.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a long time.
Guys take, yeah, man.
Wow. Well, let me hit a couple points off topic here. But let me get your pick first of all. At first it was a whitewash from what we had said. You still sticking with that pick, or what are you going with now?
I think Tank stops him in the middle rounds only because his lack of experience. One thing Tank probably is underrated for is his boxing IQ. And if you look at guys with experience like Leo Santa Cruz and a guy that was inexperienced like a Rolly Romero, they eventually made a mistake and he made them pay for it. In both of those instances, they both threw 3 right hands in a row. If you give Tank the same look that many times, 9 times out of 10, he's going to capitalize on it. Does Frank Martin have enough wrinkles not to have a little bit of success with something and keep going to that well? I don't think so. And I think it costs him in the mid rounds. I do, however, think he looks good before the stoppage. And I think he'll have moments before the stoppage, kind of like Hector Garcia did against Tank. And then I think it comes crashing down. I don't know if Frank has the whiskers. I don't know if he has the wherewithal. And I'm not questioning his heart at all. But he's in there with something different Saturday night, and he hasn't been in there with anything like this. And I can't get over the fact that he's probably coming off his worst performance. So he has a lot of ground to make up.
Now, do you think Frank has the pop to get his attention?
From what I've seen, get his attention, maybe shake him up. No, because if you listen to how Tank talks, Tank actually is opening up a lot more about how nervous he was for the Ryan fight. He did a little table sit down and he was like, I was so nervous. You know, I was getting some video of him knocking guys out in the gym and watching his highlights. So he actually said when Ryan didn't beat the count, he was relieved. I don't get that sense that he feels any kind of threat from a puncher standpoint from Frank. So I think he has enough to, I won't even say get Tank's attention. Perhaps keep Tank off of him for a few rounds, but I wouldn't say enough to get his attention.
Well, I'm going to go a little bit different than you. Oh, well, not a little bit different than you. I think he's going to get stopped, but I think it's going to be early. I think this is something that heated up, and I think Tank, I legitimately think Tank has got to prove something because I think he wants to be the face of boxing, but you need something because in the United States, we don't get behind our fighters. Canelo has the entire Mexico. And if you're going to be the face of boxing, you got to captivate the United States here. He kind of blew the bridge up a little bit with the Saudis. So he kind of like, if he's going to make that big money, there ain't many people running to him to get endorsements. No big companies are going to kind of go get endorsements. So he's got to make his money on boxing. He's got to do something big here. And I think if he does, I think he will. I think he'll do it within 3 or 4, right in that mark. Yeah, I think he's gonna get out early. I don't know. And I've seen Frank as an amateur. I don't know if he has the whiskers to hang in there. I've seen him shook a little bit.
Let me ask you a question, George.
Sure.
Do you think he stops him early because Tank stalks and goes right after him, or do you think Frank fights a little too brave for his own good early and gets clipped?
Oh, I don't think Frank's gonna fight brave.
Okay.
I think he's gonna try to keep him off him. I think Tank's gonna say, "Hey, I gotta prove a point." Hence, he doesn't show up at the grand arrival. I think he's maturing a little bit. Even when you see him talking, like he talks different. He's not quote unquote as much street as he can go there. He can if he wants to. But he's not like that. He's like, okay, this is my profession now. Now I've got to make a statement to prove that I belong here. I'm the one who's on Amazon. I'm the Amazon Prime guy. That's just my gut feeling because he has to shake things up because he's getting kind of, not that his last fight was stale. I don't buy the Ryan Garcia fight. I don't. I just think it's a fight where there's a guy who was a little bit intimidated and he didn't want to be there. And I think he was overrated a little bit. We'll find out the next fight because he did beat Devin Haney, and I was a big Devin Haney fan.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Devin Haney was overrated. That might be what it is. Just my initial thoughts because of how easily he got dismantled there. He was like tripping over his own feet there for a while. Although he did go through that, like think about it, he was even tripping over his own feet, and he still almost pulled it off, Devin Haney. So Ryan Garcia, I think we're getting a little too much stock in Ryan Garcia, but I think it's going to be an early one for him, unfortunately.
And I agree with you saying with Tank having to make a statement and maturing because he sounds better. He's a lot more mature, but I think Tank is also starting to understand how important mind games is. I think him no-showing the grand arrivals is just another mind game he's playing with Frank. Like when he pulled up this phone to show him the sparring footage, of course he had it queued up to where he was kicking Frank's. Like he's starting to understand, yes, physically, Gervonta Davis is unbelievable. Now he's starting to play the mental games, and that could be a dangerous man.
Yeah, those two would be, if he got that together, the mental and the physical game. He had a little bit of issue with the mental game when he first started, but I think now, like you said, it's starting to come in, and the maturity, the way he talks, and trying to get that mental warfare that's a big part of this game.
Absolutely.
So let me hit on a couple other points we hadn't gotten a chance to talk to. You were talking about Tank not throwing his hands, and immediately what popped into my mind was Adrian Broner. Here's a guy years ago. Now we're talking years ago when he was coming up on HBO. That's how long this was going. I said, this is a guy who can be somebody spectacular. The way he moved, how he got out of the way, the different combinations he threw, how he threw the combinations, what he brought to the table. The outside stuff I didn't like as much, but it made you either buy a ticket to watch him get beat or buy a ticket to watch him. It was one or the other. So I think it was that. This has to be the end of Adrian Broner. I mean, it was almost sad looking at him.
You know, it was sad his previous fight, just seeing, like you mentioned, man. I remember watching him just demolish Jason Litzau on HBO.
Oh yeah.
Demolish, oh God, I can't remember the guy's name, but just looked spectacular. It was almost sad seeing the venues he's been fighting at and seeing the crowd that he's drawing and almost seeing him as that afterthought, man. When you watch a guy that's a legend and you catch him towards the end of his career and it looks like he's fighting in a high school gym. These fights, since he's been with Don King, no shade to Don King, he's a legend, but since he's been with Don King's felt like that. And it's so unfortunate because Adrian Broner is 32, 33 years old. I think the problem with Adrian Broner, don't get me wrong, I think a lot of the things he was doing outside the ring didn't help his cause. But I think we saw a guy that just peaked super early. Adrian Broner conquered 4 divisions by the age of 25, and he's only one of 4 fighters in the history of boxing to do that. Sometimes you'll see a guy that's just at his best at a very young age. I think he had some missteps, like skipping 140 to go to 147 to fight Paulo Malignaggi. I do think he somewhat underplayed Marcos Medina, and he paid dearly for that. So he had some missteps, but I think the grand scheme of things, Adrian Broner just peaked early. He peaked before he was 25, and unfortunately, we see that sometimes.
Well, you didn't. So if I'm getting what you're saying is correct, you didn't think he was as talented as that, and it was only for a short period. You don't think the outside stuff, well, it could play a part, but I mean, he really got to a point where he got grossly overweight. I'd see him with a big belly, going to these concerts late, smoking, drinking. You don't think that had a more of a major part than just the peaking?
But I think they go hand in hand. So when you're a prodigy, when you come up, it takes a special person. So say, for instance, Michael Jackson was a prodigy. The treatment of his father and having all those things handed to him early was either going to make him keep going or make him say, how far do I want to keep going with this music thing? So I think when Adrian Broner, 4-division champion by the age of 25, I think that's what led to I can do this and get away with it. I can do that. But when he's peaked already, it's not so easy. You know, Floyd Mayweather is a guy that people look at and think like, oh, he has so many outside vices, when in actuality, he really doesn't. It's smoke and mirrors with Floyd Mayweather, to where with Broner, it's reality. And I remember being at, I think, the Floyd Mayweather-Miguel Cotto fight and kind of seeing it unravel a little bit, seeing Broner's behavior as opposed to when I met him the first time. He was starting to come unraveled a little bit. And I think it's because by the age of 25, everyone had told you you're the next Floyd. You're so great. Everyone can't handle that. So the outside vices, I think, is kind of a counterpart to him being so good so young, to where he felt like he can get away with this. And once he skipped the division, even though it was Paulie, and I think that was a split decision, it's not like he blew Paulie out. He lacked the discipline to get back down to 35. And I think that's what started it all, the drinking and the wanting to be a rap star and all that. So I think they go hand in hand. I think both things can be true. I think the outside vices came from people telling him how great he was from, I don't know, 13 to 24.
The curse of the you're going to be the next Floyd Mayweather is just one that you can't shake it. Look, I've said it a million times. Floyd Mayweather, I don't think he's the greatest fighter ever lived. In my era, he was the greatest fighter I've ever seen, hands down. I mean, by far. Defensively, offensively, marketing, he was and when you get tagged with that, some reason it just doesn't pan out. We just saw it with Devin Haney. It doesn't pan out. There can only be one. He should have taken his career at a different path.
Comparison is a killer of joy. I hate when I would never embrace that. I've seen guys now say, I want to be the first whoever they are. I prefer that over the relishing in the you're the next so-and-so. Everything doesn't have to be some kind of type of comparison. I mean, we've seen the kid, Anthony Edwards. He had 2 good playoff weeks in the NBA, and they were saying he was the next Michael Jordan. I just think we're in such an internet era where people, right, you can get out your opinion by having it in the palm of your hand. That's not for everybody, but he was never the next Floyd Mayweather. I actually never even saw Braun as the next Floyd Mayweather. I understood some of the comparisons with the flashiness and all that, but from a fighting stylistic standpoint, I never saw that.
No, and once that happens, Anthony Edwards was perfect. That is a perfect example. I saw, and it's a younger crowd. They'll say, "Oh, this is guy." They don't know what Jordan did. They have no clue.
No.
We were there watching it. Never lost the finals. Never. I mean, that's Game 7. Never lost that. When he got to the finals, after he got through with the Pistons, that guy could do what he wanted, and he was a very competitive guy, and he set the bar and worked harder than anybody else. Never had the outside crap deal. Now he had a gambling issue or whatever, but I mean, he focused, and I don't know if we'll ever see that again, only because of social media.
I don't know if we'll ever capture that competitive spirit again.
That's what I'm saying.
It's no disrespect to any of these athletes now, but when you talk about Michael Jordan, when you talk about Floyd Mayweather, here's a guy that got hurt very badly against Shane Mosley and refused to take a knee and take an 8 count. That's that competitive spirit. That's that vibrant nature that can't be beat. I don't know if we ever see that again, because I don't know if competition's that high. I think we've discussed it before, George. I've seen guys. I hate to bring up Errol Spence, but the guy just got his first defeat. I know he's dealt with some things, but it's like you're taking over a year off after your first loss. I don't know how I don't even know how that's a reality. I remember Peter Quillen, Kid Chocolate, getting his first loss and basically never fighting again. The competitive edge is gone. You hear the term chasing a bag. I think too many people are chasing a bag, and businessmen, not to say not to be about your business, but at the end of the day, man, this thing is about legacy as well as making money and all the other things that come along with being a pro athlete.
And why? And I think we were on the same page here, because being a professional athlete, you have to make sacrifices that nobody else does. Because even my kids, when they play, I'm like, you've got to do more. You got to do more than the others won't do to get what you're going to get. You have to, because you could sit home and do your texting and do it. But if you're going to be those elite of the elite, you don't jump off the couch and be elite. That just doesn't happen. And what we're seeing now is the softness now starting to trickle its way into where they say, well, I need the money for it. And I think they should get paid. I think everybody should get paid. I do think some of the fighters are overpaid, to be honest with you, which is why they're not making these fights. But they do have to be paid. But you have to be more than just, I'll get by. I'll do this. I'll put this money. You have to. There's no, and you're right, that urgency of, I want to be a legend. Do not compare anybody to Floyd Mayweather or Michael Jordan in competitiveness, or Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant was another one. Don't compare those. Can't.
No, it's only a handful of guys that had that level of dedication. I think of the Bernard Hopkins, the Andre Wards,
Hopkins. Yep.
guys like that. And it's unfortunate because I watched an interview Will Smith did promoting the Bad Boys movie, and he said people don't understand the different levels between good and great. It is a way wider margin than you would even imagine. Like if you look at the work Floyd Mayweather did to make him great, the next good fighter is probably even like below Broner. I mean, it's such a wide gap between being good and great. The late great Nazem Richardson used to always tell me, there's generational fighters that you will get once every 50, 60, 100 years. There's great fighters that you get every 20 to 30 years. And then there's just guys that you'll see every day.
Mm-hmm.
Generational fighters are a rare breed right now, and I think it's everything we just pointed to: the lack of competitive, the chasing the bag mentality, the wanting big money for what in some cases be perceived as a tune-up fight. I think I'm with you. I think everybody should get paid, but I think if you want the big money, you should be putting on fights that everybody wants to see, and we don't get that a lot.
Nope. And I always tell my kids when I tell them I'm a 27-year overnight success. So they might think that I have it easy, or think this is 27 years of 3 a.m, getting here on time, never late, always putting in extra, staying late. I'm here when before everyone gets here, and I'm here before everybody leaves.
Absolutely.
So, and I think that lacks because again, we're at a microwave society, and until we kind of clear that up, I think we're gonna continue to see that. But there was something else, a couple other things I want to talk to you about. So we got the Broner thing out of the way. Another sad state in boxing is Deontay Wilder. We touched on it a little bit. This is a textbook case of someone who's had too many fights and has to consider stepping away. He just had a domestic violence issue, and could end very badly. They're now talking about financial issues. Have you spoken to Deontay Wilder or his camp? And what is your basically what's your stance on where he's at now and what he should do?
So a guy who is in his camp, I saw he tweeted something along the lines once the domestic violence thing came out of saying, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said something along the lines of like, people will say anything when they get caught cheating. So I guess he was alluding to the fact that Deontay potentially caught the girl cheating or whatever. But I think it's unfortunate that the timing of it says this to me, and I could be completely wrong, but this is just my opinion. Both things can be true at the same time. I always say that. Maybe he was doing things he shouldn't have been doing. But when you get the red carpet treatment, sometimes you tolerate a little more. I think she sees the end is near with the red carpet treatment. And that makes the tolerance go down a little bit. So not saying he's guilty or innocent, not saying she's lying or telling the truth. But I think the tolerance level now is like, this guy's not what he once was. Let me strike while the iron's cold kind of deal. I would like to see if Deontay, I don't think Deontay is a guy that can change a whole lot. We know what Deontay Wilder is. He's a hell of a right hand. He used to throw a really good one too. He's even gotten away from that. That's how he got caught leading with the right hand. I'd like to see him walk away only based on the fact that I think he's overachieved beyond measure. A guy that's gotten to boxing late. He got into it for all the right reasons to support his daughter, who was special needs. He won a bronze medal. Getting into boxing super late and medaling is crazy in itself. He's become a world champion, multi-millionaire. I think the end is near, and I think it should be near. And I think he should take everything that I just said, not saying take my advice, but for all those reasons, and truly think about stepping away from the game. I think he's almost 40. It's kind of too late to reinvent himself. I know a lot of people are pointing to Malik Scott, not being the guy. But at this point, who is the guy? I think he will look back eventually and kind of reassess getting rid of Mark Breland. He's 1-3 without Mark Breland. I just think there's so many variables that went into the way his career played out at the end. But it's unfortunate to see it ending, knockout loss, not a DV on him. It's not a good look.
So two things with that I'm going to point out. You hit on Mark Breland for a little bit. The training videos that have been coming out of what he was doing. Number one, there's too many things going on in there. I don't know if you agree with that. He's got the stick and he's going around in different circles. That one of the things that I've always said, what Emmanuel Stewart was very good at, you're not going to change a guy like a Lennox Lewis. He took Lennox Lewis. He said, I'm just going to make what he has a little bit better. Because his style is his style. Holyfield, when he get hit, they want to box. Next thing you know, he gets hit. He's back to fighting like Evander Holyfield. So he had all these things going on. So many chiefs in the kitchen, and then not enough Indians there. He was all over the place. Number one, do you think that was the bigger issue? And number two, is he a Hall of Famer?
So the first issue, I always like to give guys the benefit of the doubt because I understand what this internet era is. So is Deontay Wilder really got a mop handle with a glove on it? Punch? Is he doing that for 30 seconds just for the cameras, or is that part of his training regimen? I don't know. So I try to just, I guess, give him the benefit of the doubt. Like, I hope he's not spinning in a circle and, doing these things. I do think Mark Breland being out of his camp, Mark Breland was the guy for him. And that's not to say Malik Scott won't be a good trainer. I just don't think Malik Scott is the guy for Deontay Wilder. And for the main reason is they hang out together. When I talk to great trainers, Derek James with Errol Spence, Nazem Richardson with Bernard Hopkins, they all told me, like, I've never been in his house. We don't hang out. I'm not his friend like that. There's a separation that has to be there. I don't like seeing Breland and Wilder hanging out on the couch together and doing things like that. Not to say that dynamic can't work. I just don't think it's for Deontay Wilder. So I don't think he can change much in that. I do think hindsight will look back years from now and say leaving Mark Breland was a detriment. With the other part of it, God, man, that's so tough. It's so tough for me to wrap my mind around who is a Hall of Famer now because these guys are so inactive. They have guys that's going to retire with 30 fights, and we got to figure out if 26-4 is Hall of Fame worthy. Now, I know Wilder's in the 40-ish win thing. Man, that's a tough one. I think
he did defend the title. He did defend the title a bunch.
Yeah.
So
I think people are going to look at opposite. I think eventually he gets in. I don't know if he's first ballot.
Okay.
But eventually he gets in. He has one of the highest knockout ratios in boxing history. He did have multiple defenses. He just honestly ran across a guy he couldn't beat. So, I mean, I would consider him.
Okay, because I was just at the Hall of Fame this past weekend, and that was like a hot topic. People were like, "You think Deontay Wilder?" In my opinion, I looked at some of the people that were in the hall. I mean, some of those don't belong there, and I'm not. I'm like,
I'm with you.
I'm like, I don't know. And some people that I was looking at that shouldn't be in the hall, they're like revered as these great fighters. I'm like, right? They were exciting fighters. They got beat a bunch of times. I didn't think many of those guys belonged in the hall. So the possibility of Deontay Wilder getting in, I think it is a possibility, like you said, down the road. But it's a tough call. I think that his title offenses gets him in.
Yeah.
But last point I wanted to make. Now I know you've talked to Jorge Masvidal a bunch.
Yes.
Have you talked to Nate Diaz about this fight or no? They're having I wouldn't say a celebrity boxing match, but a boxing match that that's not their main discipline. Have you talked to either one of them about this fight coming up? And what do you think about it after the brawl that took place right outside of Florida?
I don't understand how any promoter or whoever's putting these things on keep bringing these camps together and not expect something like that to happen.
Unbelievable.
It's inevitable to happen. Nate Diaz obviously has no interest in press conferences. He's walked out on like 3 of them. I understand you have to market and promote, but that keep bringing these camps together and not expecting something like that to happen is kind of being a little bit naive. I haven't talked to Nate, but I'm really good friends with Richard Perez. If you don't know who Richard Perez is, he even describes himself as the old gray-haired guy that's been around Nate Diaz since forever. He's his boxing coach. Rich Perez is a great guy. I haven't spoke to Jorge recently about this fight, but I have spoken to him about this fight. My opinion on it is it doesn't go much different than the MMA fight when they fought for the BMF title in the UFC. I think Jorge Masvidal is just a more crisper puncher.
Right.
I'm a little more into fighting now than Nate is. It's kind of like a side hustle to him.
Yeah.
And I think for those reasons it plays out much like the fight in the UFC where Jorge Masvidal was relatively dominant.
Do you think Nate Diaz even wants to be here?
I think it's a side hustle, and the side hustle is if your side hustle is you pour concrete with me, George. Some days I'm gonna come to your house and blow the horn, and you're gonna say, I'm good. I'm staying in bed, and some days you're gonna come hustle. He has views it. It's a job where it's like, if I can get enough money, the right guy, I'll fight. If not, I'll stay in bed essentially. And I think he's so out of the loop with the way fighting works. Like Nate just wants to show up and fight. He doesn't want to promote. He doesn't want to do these press conferences. He doesn't want to do these face-offs. Unfortunately, especially in the streaming world and the internet, that's just where we are. So he's old school in that sense. And the fact you add to it, it's basically a side hustle to him. He's straddling the fence, and unfortunately, we're in a sport where you can get hurt badly straddling the fence. And I think you've seen in a few of his last fights that Nate should be thinking about hanging it up soon.
Well, you have 4 or 5 press conferences, which is a little overboard. This was bound to pop off at some point. Everybody in each of those teams wants to fight. They're not going to shade away from it. They're going to actually go to it. Not probably the smartest idea for the promoter to do that, but you're right. You got to promote it. But boy, that would scare me when you got an old man swinging on one of the fighters there. It just got a little bit out of control for me.
And you're right about it being overboard. How many cities we have to go to where they pretty much regurgitate the same thing? They do the face off and it's almost a squabble, and then eventually it becomes a squabble. Like how much of that do you need? So I think eventually it was going to come to a head. It did. And
it's not like it's Conor McGregor. It's not like it's Conor McGregor and Mayweather. It's not like you don't have to go city to city. You could do one, and that's it.
People that's invested in this fight and want to watch it, I think they're already sold on it. So
yeah,
I just how, and they better be careful with the weigh-ins because one bad move and we're canceling hard because and Entourage is going to jail or something crazy. So they got to be careful with this one because I think part of it is Nate has no want to do this. So it's easy for him to just cause a ruckus and get out of it.
Well, it definitely will pique my interest a little bit. I'm going to watch it. I'll just see what it is. But I'm just as far as that goes, I like seeing the chaos. So the only I don't like is when the old man's involved there. That got me a little nervous. Goose egg on it. I said, oh, geez, you don't want to be fighting those guys. But they all throw down. But either way, as always, Percy Crawford, Azanger News. Where can I get a hold of you?
I'm on Instagram at Mr. Louisiana, Twitter the same handle, and Facebook is Percy Crawford. Got some interesting things coming down the pipeline, so I'll be possibly announcing it right here with you, George. Hopefully, if you give me the platform.
Wait a second here. This I gotta have a guarantee you're gonna announce it here on my show. You got to tell me what can you announce it here on my show when you are allowed to?
Absolutely.
All right, cool. That'll be good. We'll be looking forward to it.
Something that you can be involved with, and it's gonna be pretty cool.
Well, as always, Percy, it's always good to hear from you, and especially on big fight weeks. Be cool down there. It's hot in Louisiana.
It is hot, man. But I tell you, I can't wait till the fights, man, and hopefully we can chop it up afterwards, brother. Because I think it'll talk about.
It will be. I usually do a Sunday show, but when you're available on Monday, if you're available the Monday after, we'll be ready to go.
Let's do it, brother.
If you're available Sunday, boxing and bagels, it's just the perfect connection.
I'll jump on, brother. I'll jump on for sure.
Then Sunday it is, man.
All right, man.
As always, Percy, good seeing you.
All right, brother.
Take care.
Thanks for watching the Zapata Brand Podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast and listen where all podcasts are available.